Hi, this is another improvised review of the new Ghost in the Shell anime. This time episodes 1 and 2 because I missed the other one last week. This is continuing to be good. I also think that this is a bit better than the first episode, a better impression than I had last time. Of course, episode 2 is a lot more sexual, will probably be the most sexual episode in the whole series. And if you compare it to the manga, this is like nothing. So there's still a bit of censoring, so to speak. I mean, if this came out in the 2000 or OVA days, I could imagine there just being no censor at all. But that's beside the point. I think that's included in at all is already a pretty good sign. While this might go more viral, it's the thing I cared less about this episode. In episode 2, we of course see in the later half the, let's say, beginnings or allusion to parts that are of course in the manga, but also might seem familiar if you have seen the first movie, the first adaptation of Ghost in the Shell. Because this is where the whole Ghost in the Shell plot starts up a bit. And with that comes also, of course, one of my favorite scenes from the original movie and also from the manga, and that's the car ride scene where Motoko and Togusa talk for a while. And I love this moment because it characterizes Motoko, it characterizes how Togusa thinks. Talking about Togusa, it's of course pretty cool to see his home life, but that's also something you see in the manga. It's still a pretty accurate adaptation, even though it doesn't adapt things one-to-one or anything. But yeah, I like this characterization, and I think that this also again shows, like for about half the episode, it shows, yeah, of course, manga Motoko is pretty silly, but she's also has a pretty serious side, and those moments show her serious side. And I think I usually just reiterate this because people think like the manga version is like super silly, and that's of course partly true, but it's of course sometimes dismissive of other adaptations, and as if the manga is never serious at all, and I think that's just simply not true. And then moving on into the the third episode, we of course continue with the cliffhanger of the second episode, which, you know, if you think about it, it's good that I skipped a week. But we can continue from there, and we of course, just generally talking about it, we of course have the chase that you of course know if you have seen the movie. I am not entirely sure if everything is exactly like in the manga, because I don't really remember it that well. I think there are many things that seem familiar, but what I especially liked in episode 3 is this moment of heightened senses, like heightened concentration, where the major tries in a smart way to find out where cloaked individual is. And then of course there was a pretty intense shootout, although I think it's pretty maybe a bit weirdly framed, because it cuts to the opening, but then after the opening it's seen as less serious, so I don't know how to feel about that, but it's still pretty fun. And then another thing that's one of my favorite things from the manga is the whole creating a cyborg aspect, because it shows how it's done, like how it's really, you can really see that someone thought about how this would work. And that's one of the things I always liked about Ghost in the Shell. It's not like super realistic or anything, it just cannot be, but it really has this thought put into the designs of its machinery. And what's interesting about that aspect is, of course, also that the after conversation, as far as I remember in the manga, it was just between the Doctor and Motoko, but here it is 3 people, and I like the whole speech that you have about consciousness, because that's also in the manga, but also I like how they framed it, and it's also something that will be familiar to anyone who has seen the movie, because it's basically almost one-to-one how it was said in the movie, which is very funny, I think. Both episodes had pretty good illustrations at the end again. One was so good that it really, like the one in episode 2 actually kind of mesmerized me, like how the colors are used, and I have even seen it used in the new thumbnail of Mother's Basement for this video. I think I have nothing really more to say. I guess there was also the jungle scene. I think this is of course not too interesting. The one of the characters kind of reminded me of Lupin the Third for some reason. I don't really know why. I think so far it's still going pretty well. Not like a one-to-one super accurate adaptation, but still faithful in its spirit, basically. Bar scene is great. I think I have nothing else to say really apart from that. Bye.